Slivers have an interesting history with me. One of the decks I used to struggle playing against when I was still new to Commander were Sliver decks, and for the longest time I've considered them one of the most powerful tribes in Magic. Their biggest strength is their hive mind style of play. Every sliver you play will grant a benefit to all your other slivers. Some will grant this to slivers on your opponent's board, so they'll benefit as well, but this is relegated to largely the older style of slivers. With the advent of Commander Masters, we're finally getting a sliver tribal precon deck, led by the sweet Sliver Gravemother. This 6/6 sliver has 3 abilities. The first is giving slivers blanket protection from the legend rule. Now normally this doesn't matter much, as in Commander we're only ever going to control one copy of each card, right? Well, her second and third abilities break that, giving each sliver card in our graveyard Encore X, where X is the card's mana value. Encore is a reanimation ability that lets you pay, in this case, the card's mana value in whatever colors you'd like, to then exile that card from the graveyard. You then create a token copy of that creature for each opponent you have. That token has haste. Those tokens must attack the player that they are created for, and then they're sacrificed at the beginning of the next end step. You can only Encore at sorcery speed. This is kinda nuts, so your slivers in the grave in a sense gain Myriad, making this a very aggressive play style. You'll want to load up on creatures in your graveyard, and then you can, in the case of a 4-player game, get triple the value out of your slivers as you give them an Encore. Now, that being said, this deck does carry with it the vulnerability of being a glass cannon. We don't have a viable means to return any exiled creatures to our graveyard to go again should this strategy punt. This really is an all or nothing kind of game, and so knowing the risk that comes with possibly overextending and failing to take out our opponents, we are going to be on some alternate win cons that we'll talk about much later. For now, let's start the card by card. Our first suite of cards will be our ramp package. We are in 5 colors, making mana fixing a critical early game priority. Cards like Birds of Paradise, Deathrite Shaman are our usual suspects, being able to give us our colors. Bloom Tender can theoretically give us all 5 at once should we have our commander out. We also run both Gemhide Sliver and Mana Weft Sliver, 2 slivers that give our slivers the ability to tap for any mana. Once we get our mana engines online, we can follow into some of our more generic value slivers who will grant us the best benefits available to us. Cloud Shredder Sliver gives both flying and haste, which is equal parts evasion and aggression. Crystalline Sliver gives our slivers Shroud, protecting them from any interaction our opponents are on. Quick Sliver gives flash to our slivers, which can give us a means to hold up mana until just before our turn begins, to then flash in several new slivers. Two-Headed Sliver gives Menace to our board, which is a great finisher ability. I thought long and hard about adding in some trample granting slivers, but to be honest, I think that going the Menace route will make it harder to intercept the alpha strike this deck will be going for, forcing opponents to either block at a disadvantage rather than giving them the option of chump blocking. But if you do choose to go the trample route, I do suggest that you throw in something like Horn Sliver as a low-costed trample enabler. Darkheart Sliver and Necrotic Sliver both have some neat utility going on with this deck, giving us sacrifice abilities onto our slivers. Do note that even if we utilize the Gravemother to create us 3 token copies of a sliver, those abilities will still come along, so with these 2 we do get some relevant utility for post-combat plays. The Darkheart Sliver gives us some life padding benefit simply by sacrificing the sliver tokens before the end step, and then Necrotic Sliver has a very powerful permanent removal for 3 mana. I also would like to note that this just denotes permanence, so the world is your oyster for what this can target. Harmonic Sliver gives a naturalized effect upon each sliver entering the battlefield, which can handle any problematic cards. Homing Sliver is perhaps one of my favorites, giving each sliver the ability Sliver Cycling 3, which lets you pay 3 mana, pitch a sliver from your hand, and then tutor for any sliver. This works great with our commander, as we can simply use those pitched cards later on. Lava Belly Sliver has a ping ability that on its own seems a little lackluster, but when you're creating 3 copies of it, and then get a few more slivers on the board, either on their own or in the copy trio situation, this damage can start to add up. Spiteful Sliver is along the same lines, threatening retaliation damage against any damage dealt to your slivers. If you ever need to pivot to the defense, this is a great card to have out to give your blocker some added punching power. Lastly, we do run Sliver Legion. This is the only old school legend we carry in this deck. This is literally a coat of arms style effect for our slivers, pumping them up for that final push for game. This is perhaps my favorite to target with the Encore ability, as not only does the legend rule not force you to sacrifice the Legion copies, but you also now get to pump up each sliver by +3/+3 for each other sliver. This will bring up the legions themselves to 13/13 just with the 2 other copies, making for a tremendous amount of damage. Lastly, Bone Scythe Sliver grants double strike to your slivers, meaning that 13 damage will actually end up being 26 if unblocked. So the primary game plan is to pitch these slivers to the graveyard, either by something like the Sliver Cycling ability, or by our next section, which will focus on supporting getting our creatures to the graveyard. Fauna Shaman is a cheap way to trade in a creature in your hand for literally anything you need from your library. Fiend Artisan is a flexible pod effect, letting us pay X and one of either green or black, sacrifice a creature, and then tutor for a creature with a mana value of X or less, and put it into the battlefield. This can be a great mana sink to get out your most important creatures, although like other pod effects, it can only be done at sorcery speed. Eldritch Evolution is a classic. It lets us trade in a creature for just about anything in the deck. Since the majority of our creatures in the deck are either 4 mana or less, this can grab just about anything. Neoform is another great trade-in card, letting us swap out a creature for a slightly bigger one. We also run the Classic Entomb, so should we be ready to go off, we can simply pitch something like, say, Sliver Legion to the graveyard, Encore it, and then that'll bring us to the end game. We also bring the pair of Birthing Pod and Pyre of Heroes, both of which let us sacrifice a creature for a creature, in the case of the Pyre of the Heroes, that is also a sliver, that is 1 mana more expensive. But again, this is a great way to both develop your board state and your graveyard for future plays. The Hermit Druid is in here. It's a personal favorite of mine, thank you Nathan, which if it is able to resolve its ability, it will mill our entire deck. We do not run basic lands in this deck, and so this will bin our entire library, although this is going to be setting us up for some further plays if we're on our win cons. Now let's discuss how this deck is to win. We've alluded to it throughout the entire video so far, but the easiest path to victory is through the Encore ability giving us token copies of our slivers, getting us extra value from their abilities, and then alpha striking with a substantially pumped up army that, because of our several flavors of abilities, are incredibly hard to block. The only drawback to this strategy is that you do need to have established a decent sized board state. I generally would use this ability to copy the Legion, the Darkheart, the Lava Belly Slivers, but you can even go further to get extra bodies on the ground. Should we need extra reanimation abilities that are not on our commander, we also run Eerie Ultimatum, Living Death, Patriarch's Bidding, and of course Underworld Breach, all of which can help bring our graveyard back as well. Now should these plans fail for whatever reason, we are also on Thassa's Oracle and Consultation to provide a very convenient and very effective backup plan. Cast the Oracle, then while the ETB is on the stack, you cast and resolve the Consultation to insta-win us the game. If the Oracle somehow makes its way into the graveyard, perhaps by an awkwardly milling Hermit Druid, we are also on Narcomoeba and Dread Return, both of which have abilities that work in the graveyard. The Narcomoeba, if milled, comes to the field, and then we can sacrifice 3 creatures to use Dread Return from the graveyard, letting us reanimate the Oracle, and boom. So before we wrap up this look at the Sliver Gravemother, I do want to stress that at the time of this recording, this is the only card we've seen from the new Sliver Precon deck. I'm sure as we grow closer to the release of the actual product, we will see just how many new cards will support this Encore strategy, and I will try to incorporate those abilities into this list. Now, if you want to see my full list, which will include updates to this list as I test new cards out, you can of course check out the Moxfield link in the video description. I hope you enjoyed this deck, and I would love to hear your suggestions and spicy tech for this deck. The card I originally contemplated for this deck was the Biomancer's Familiar, or even Training Grounds to help cheapen up that Encore cost. But it ultimately didn't do enough for the overall deck, and therefore was cut. But anyway, if you enjoyed this video, remember to like and share this video with your playgroup, and as always, I'll catch you next time.